Hey, how's it going, everyone? Just want to do a video on just a few sort of random thoughts. I was watching the Flat Earth International Conference live stream last night from our friend Karen B. Um, I mean, it was a joke. I don't even know what to say. It was just funny that it was not funny. Um, and Owen Benjamin was doing a stand-up routine, which just purely from the merits of a stand-up routine, it was awful. He clearly didn't prepare anything, and I'd be very interested to know how much he got paid for that, but it was awful. But I wanted to talk about a few experiences that I have recently, mostly related to like the economy and stuff. And then I had a job interview a couple of days ago. Just talk about that experience, which was kind of funny to me. And I got a text this morning from a friend of mine in Canada, and him and I used to work together at Amazon, and we had a boss who was just like out of his mind. But I realized he actually wasn't really out of his mind. He was just doing what was required of him, like to sort of build up a team, isolate a few people who were drinking the corporate Kool-Aid, and then get rid of everybody else, and just keep doing that over and over again. That's their job security, is essentially needing to point out to other people how other people are doing something wrong. That's the that's the fundamental way that people are creating job security at the sort of manager level and above in America right now, in the corporate world. I know this now. I didn't know this at that time. And so he was just texting me saying that, that his current boss, she's worse. She just stays at the office all the time. And then so companies think that she cares because like she's there all the time, and she probably answers the phone all the time. And so they won't get rid of her because of quote unquote loyalty. She's just a slave, corporate sellout. And then she gets to go and make other people's lives miserable. And he was telling me that, she's gotten rid of many, many people in the last few years. And in Canada, it's harder to fire people. So I'm surprised she'll get away with that. But again, it just shows that the whole system is completely backwards. And for the top down, that's the way it is. And so the higher you get up, the less likely it is. It's still possible to get taken advantage of. But I was just listening to him, and just how he's looking around and stuff now. And I actually had to apologize. And so I'm sort of doing a little bit more inventory, not much because I don't really interact with many people, but I did apologize. And I would recommend for people out there, in whatever way that they can. Again, I'm not the best example of this. Like stuff that we've done in the past, this to me is a great time to like do an inventory and then, settle debts, whatever those debts may be. It may just be literally saying, I'm sorry. Because this guy, I was like sort of mentoring him, but I was mentoring him as if corporations care about like smart people and like doing good work. But when you have that many people, my boss purposely overhired people. You just have to like toe the line. You can't do very much. You can't do anything creative. You can't optimize anything because you're gonna, take other people's jobs away. And so I was sort of pushing him to be, a better person, a better accountant, the way I thought. And then so I realized that I was pushing him, in the wrong direction. And so, I think the agenda of my boss would have happened no matter what. It just maybe would have happened a little bit further down the road, but we were already marked, from the get-go. He was not on the same level, at least according to them, and then I was in the opposite camp in the sense that I was too vocal, like trying to change everything and stuff like that. So we were marked early for dismissal, but I just felt bad because looking back, I didn't give him the right advice at that time. The better advice would be to blend in. And if a person really wanted to stay at Amazon, they just have to work all the time. They have to be by their laptop, their phone, pretty much all the time for their boss to, call you and ask you for stuff, even if it's completely useless, just because then they know that you're under submission to them, and then they can pretty much, control you, and control the direction and the narrative. And so whenever a person joins a company, they don't join the company at all. They join their boss, and his objectives and his agenda almost always has to be the law and HR will support that, because if HR didn't, then you would just have chaos. You'd have people just complaining all over the place and all that kind of stuff. There would just be literal chaos. So HR will back a manager's agenda almost no matter what it is, unless it's just blatantly and overtly against company policy. But even sometimes then it still can go unchecked. And so, it's I just had to apologize to him, and I think that I'll keep thinking of different people that I may need to say that to. It's not that I was doing anything wrong or trying to get anything from him. I genuinely was trying to push him to be smarter, come up with more intelligent solutions, more complete, and all that kind of stuff, because my background is in accounting and his isn't. But I didn't know at that time. I know very clearly what's going on now, why that's the case, and it's not even our manager's fault at Amazon. Even this woman here in Canada, his current boss, she's doing that for job security. That is what, it's clearly working. And so it may not work forever, but it clearly works in the short term. And so that's her way of embedding herself in the company and creating churn, which creates job security for her. And so that's that. And he was just telling me that his company is sales are down, they're insolvent, they're, approaching that. And so, things are not looking good. He said in Canada, it's clear to him that things are slowing down. And so it's very, very obvious here. I just posted a video, Gregory Mannarino, who's a Freemason, telling us, again, that's now pretty much mainstream. People in the mainstream are quoting Zero Hedge in mainstream news. So Zero Hedge is no longer alternative news. It's just mainstream financial commentary with a little bit of humor infused in, but it's telling us what's actually going on. And I suspect it's actually much worse, because they don't have access to the real underpinning, the heartbeat of what's actually going on at the deeper levels. We always see the result, which always has a certain latency. But I went on this job interview and so I have to go to job interviews in order to maintain unemployment. So sometimes when I hear back from people and they want to interview me, I'm like, oh man, really? And then so this one, they wanted to bring me in for an interview right away. And I just said, no, I want to talk first to the recruiting manager and tell her my story, because, I have a lot of short-term work assignments, 6 months to a year, back to back to back. And so I just want to tell them, because it's if any of these are deal breakers, I don't want to put on a suit and tie and then go in and pretend like I care about a company. And so I made it past that, and I was not blunt, but I was fairly upfront about my background and what happened in the past. And so it looks like they're kind of looking maybe for somebody like that, a bit of a renegade. But I go in, and then the funny thing is this interview is on the 20-something floor of obviously a high-rise building. And then the first thing I look out is past the girl that's interviewing me is the horizon. I'm like, dude, that looks flat. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, man, this would be a great place to do observations, for flat earth and stuff. Cause it's a pretty, there's even more floors than that above. So there's even more floors, I think, than my apartment building here. But the nice thing about this area is that it's fairly open. You can see far, obviously. But so I was kind of in my mind, distracted a little bit about the flat earth, the flat stationary earth that we live on. But, the first part of the interview was good. And then it's maybe 30 minutes pass. And then the girl was like, yeah, the guy, my boss, he might've gone to lunch already, do you mind coming back tomorrow? And then in my mind, I'm just if I leave this place, I'm definitely not coming back, for just because this guy went to lunch and didn't bother to care about the fact that there's an interview going on. And so I was I said yes, but I was definitely not going to come back. And then so, I don't know how to say no in a polite way. That would not get me literally removed from that place. So I pretty much, again, I feel you literally have to lie in order to live right now. But I didn't necessarily have to, but if I did tell the truth, I would never have, come back. They would not, ask me to come back if I'm that high maintenance in the first 30 minutes, but I don't really consider that high maintenance, because I come there for an interview and then I go to the second one. The guy actually didn't go to lunch, I guess. And so I talked to him, go through my story, And then I mentioned, the term KPI, which is a very, very common term in accounting and finance and operations and everything, key performance indicator. And he's like, "What's a KPI?" And so I was like, in my mind, I'm like, this can't be happening. I hope he was joking, but I'm pretty sure he wasn't. And this would be not my boss, but my boss's boss, who didn't know what a KPI was. And so, I just shook my head internally. And then so at the end, he's like, if you're the first person we've interviewed, and then we're gonna go through some other ones, and then if you can come back, and then we might do some tests and stuff like that. And just for the record, I don't say this to brag, but I have an undergrad in electrical engineering where I won the gold medal, which is the highest average in that program over the 4 years. I have a master's in electrical engineering from Rice. I was admitted into their PhD program, which is very exclusive, but I left after a master's. I have almost a perfect score on my math GRE, and I have a master's in accounting, and I'm a CPA. And then so I just thought the irony in this is unreal, that he's asking me again, this is my boss's boss, what a KPI is, and then I'm to come back to do an evaluation, whether I'm qualified for the job. And the way they describe the job, like somebody in high school could do it. Like, you just take some numbers from the balance sheet, which is what's called like a work in progress. Like, they're basically costs that are held on the balance sheet until a project is completed, or they're there lingering, and a project is completed, but those monies needs to be released to the income statement and assigned to a certain project and expensed. And because it's audit risk, it's all these different problems. If you have money hanging on the balance sheet, it could look like fraud. I'm not saying that they're fraudulent, but that's the worry. And so it's a very much balance sheet focused job, in the sense that you have to track down where these costs are supposed to be allocated and then go and allocate them. So it's just literally like brain dead, mindless work. And I need to be brought back in order to figure out whether I'm capable of doing that kind of thing. So you can't make this stuff up. The world is hilarious. And then another aspect of my job search, which I find hilarious, is I get at least 5 or 6 calls every day from some consultant, some Indian person, and I'm Indian, so I'm not making fun of them, but saying, we have this 6-month contract role, or 1 year or whatever. All they're doing is they call you, and then if you don't answer, they email you right away. And then if they really want you, they'll text you. And so I'm getting all these random calls from all these different parts of the US, and some international. And then all they're doing is they're like, "Are you interested in the job?" And if you say yes, they say, "What is your rate?" And then you agree on a rate, and then they just put that in writing, and then they send that application in to the company, and then they get some cut. So let's say I agree to $45 an hour. They may get $50 or $60 an hour, and then they get maybe even double that. Who knows? They get some amount just literally for calling me, annoying me, and then agreeing to a rate, and then submitting the application. And I've never gotten any response from that ever. And I don't accept the calls anymore, but it's just a huge volume of consultants that, or recruiters looking for consultants, part-time people. And they're just not adding value. They literally just call you and then get you to agree to the lowest rate possible, get it in writing, and then submit your application. They don't vet you in any way. They just try and send as many resumes in as humanly possible. And they want to be the first person. So it's usually it's a few different people for the same job. And so there's 6-month jobs, 1 year. And if you read these applications, it's hilarious. We're talking for 6-month roles. First of all, you're getting paid nothing, which you should get paid a lot more if you're working for such a short period of time. But all the requirements are this long, of all the different background that you need and stuff like that. It's literally insane, what they're requesting for such a short-term role. And then the reality, what I realize now is the true scam is the college system, because it's one thing to have a corporate world like this, and just all this uncertainty and all these politics, but it's another thing that's deeply insulting, that people are in school for so long to literally do nothing, and just to manage a bunch of people. And so that's the part that is incredibly evil about the system. And there's a lot of people buried in debt. Thankfully, I'm not, but a lot of people are, to do jobs that you don't need any of that. It's like absolutely not required. And it overqualifies you in a lot of cases because, again, the jobs are so trivial. They're so simple. Like this job, if I were to get it, and I hope I don't, if they give me another interview request, which I hope they don't, but if they do, I may or may not take it seriously. I might just go and troll them a little bit. We'll see. I might have fun with it. I may take it seriously, but you just need a high school degree to do this job. You don't even need a college education really at all. And they were telling me that the woman that was supposed to do this, is now, a stay-at-home mom, and she didn't want to be pushed to do this kind of job. I'm like, really? You could train an animal to do this kind of work. It's so stupid. And the guy even just told me that they had layoffs recently, and it's this is how sick these companies are. It's they laid off a bunch of people recently, and then now they would potentially hire somebody new to fill this role when they could have easily, taken somebody who was just laid off or about to be laid off and train them to do this kind of a job. Because again, it's extremely simple. There's nothing conceptually difficult about it or anything like that. It's just phone calls, talking to people, calling people, building relationships, and then asking them, hey, what are these costs? That's all it is. And then just sitting down with them. And that's it. Maybe going in person if you can, if you have access. But that's what's really evil about this system is that, again, God is behind it, so only he knows why he did all this. But, 12 years and then college and then, masters and certifications and all that to do absolutely mind-numbing work is just a financial scam. That's just what it is. And it's very, very obvious that is the case. And, it looks like from every direction it's crumbling down. So for those people out there, I guess just to summarize on this, if you're a quote-unquote truther, interested in the truth and all that kind of stuff, we have a lot of nut jobs, unfortunately, in flat earth, but it's a good time. The truth is just obvious now. I don't even really have to say much really on anything. I just take what I see in the mainstream, and I don't even have to go to the flat earth videos. That's just, again, the icing on the cake. It's just in the mainstream now, that America's falling apart. So the only thing that really all of us now have to observe is when does it sort of become noticeable and that type of thing. And, is there an architect? Is there a narrative behind it, or is this just another country that's just collapsing and then will sort of reorient itself down the road? And to me, that cannot be the case, just because of the structures that are in place. All these colleges and universities, which, like I said earlier, do not serve any purpose really at all, way overkill, and in many cases overqualify you for a lot of the jobs here, are holding all the money, and what purpose do they serve when you don't need a 4-year degree anywhere, for anything, unless maybe you're a surgeon, doing some work that involves other people's safety and health and stuff like that. That's different. That makes sense. But all these other, especially all this quote business related, accounting, finance, and all that kind of stuff, it's absolutely insane, to be in school for that long, to learn the basics of debits and credits and stuff like that. Finance is not really that complicated. It's just made complicated because of high frequency trading and that type of thing. But it's very, very simple. It's not, there are things out there in the world that are complicated in nature, but not, a debit and a credit, which is what all of everything in accounting and finance boil down to. And then financial statements. And that's just what it is. And KPIs, which this director did not know what it was. So, there's no way that this will just reorient itself and continue on, because again, it's a very consumer-based economy and stuff that people don't need, and it's burden, and it's and the entire system is to burden people with student loan debt, which again is not necessary in order to function at all. In any economy, to be in school for that long, and then be encumbered with that much debt, and so. This really all we have, and it's especially if you're in the Bible, this is a great time, because the Bible prophesies a place called Mystery Babylon undergoing a controlled demolition, and God is behind it, and we see it happening right before our eyes, where truth is removed, Money is in a few people's hands. That's also prophesied in the Mark of the Beast prophecy, where there will only be rich and poor. And that's just what it is. And that's Bible prophecy, even though it's difficult for all of us to swallow. If we're on the wrong end of that, we need to rejoice, because it's God doing it. So ultimately, if God wins, then we have to be happy. That's just what it is. And it looks like he's winning. And it's becoming very, very much mainstream. So it's a good time to be a truther. It's a really good time. We people with Bible in hand now have really the luxury of just seeing this thing play out, and it's just happening right before our eyes. And there'll be a lot of people who are scratching their heads. But for us, it's very, very obvious that America is undergoing a controlled demolition. Hope everyone's doing well. Bye.